Maybe I'm a little late on this one, since Bungie is already starting to address it, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyway. Now, normally on the channel, I talk solely about the PvE sandbox. Today is the day I finally dip my toes in the waters of the Crucible and talk about what's going on in PvP. Since the release of the final shape, one thing has become very clear. Prismatic Hunters are taking over the PvP landscape. From swarm grenades to clones to invisibility, they've got it all. But with every class having more varied abilities and higher uptime than ever before, why is the Prismatic Hunter specifically so oppressive? We'll be taking a dive into everything surrounding the Prismatic Hunter in PvP, and why exactly we are where we are today. Hey everyone, I'm Rizeki, and welcome to my design analysis of the Prismatic Hunter in PvP. As always, thanks for checking out the video. I usually cover PvE here on the channel, but if you want to see more PvP coverage, let me know by subscribing to the channel and liking the video. We're less than 400 subscribers away from the big 5K, and I'd love to have you around for that. And also, don't forget the Rizeki Ice Shaker from Advanced is still available. Make sure to check the description for a link and use code Rizeki for 10% off your order at checkout. To anyone who has been around the Crucible and Destiny long enough, you know that hunters are no strangers to being the best of the best. Whether you remember the Omnioculus Lord of Wolves meta, the Renewal Grasp meta, the Strand Hunter meta, or you've just lost to a team of 3 Prismatic Hunters in your flawless game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hunters have kits that seem to be made just for the Crucible. High agility, a number of powerful PvP exotics, and quite a few great utility abilities. Although most, if not all, of the Hunter subclasses have some combination of the above, there is something about Prismatic Hunter that took the class from a 9.5 to an 11. Like a lot of previous videos, let's break down this video into bite-sized sections to make everything more organized. In today's video, we'll be covering the following: utility, ability uptime, supers, exotic support, and flexibility. I think this is a solid list, so let's jump right in. I've kind of ordered the list by most impactful to least impactful, and it should be no surprise to anyone that the utility present on the Prismatic Hunter kit is second to none. There are 5 major abilities that provide this utility: Swarm Grenades, Duskfield Grenades, Grapple Grenades, Snare Bomb, and Threaded Spectre. There are some minor options as well, depending on the needs of your build, but I'm going to focus on the big ones that, in my eyes, are the biggest pain points. 4 out of the 5 of these abilities provide the same type of utility. It's not the only kind each one provides, but one they all have in common: Area Denial / Zone Control. Area Denial is one of the strongest tools any PvP player could have in their kit. You can easily lock down choke points, cut off angles of attack, prevent revives, and even keep enemy players off of objectives. There are 2 types of these Area Denial abilities: active ones and passive ones. Some abilities can be used in a hybrid way depending on your situation as well. Historically, passive Area Denial tools have been a large pain point in Destiny. Remember the young Ahamkar's Spine Hunters? Nearly invisible trip mine grenades were everywhere, with insane uptime. Trip mines are a passive Area Denial tool where you could set and forget them, locking down choke points and devastating opponents that dare to walk through. Now, Prismatic Hunter doesn't have trip mines, but they do have snare bombs and threaded specters. Snare bombs are the primary passive Area Denial ability. Stick them to a wall, just like a trip mine. Unlike a trip mine though, the damage is pretty minimal. Instead, snare bombs will essentially blind your opponent and weaken them. It might actually be more frustrating to play against, since with trip mines, you could still easily react and defeat your opponent, even if you took a lot of damage, so long as you land your shots before they pick you off. Snare bombs actively make it more difficult to see, move, and shoot, meaning that you're at a severe disadvantage if the hunter player pushes you while you're debuffed. It never feels good to lose control of your character in any way, and it leads to a lot of frustration when dealing with these nearly invisible snare bombs. Threaded Spectres are a very unique type of Area Denial. I would actually call Spectres the best example of a hybrid Area Denial ability. You could use them pretty much like a snare bomb, leaving them around corners or in chokes to discourage players from approaching. But you could also use them mid-fight to almost instantly damage your opponent when they least expect it. Threaded Spectres also have the bonus of generating threadlings, which could further force players away from the location of the Spectre once it's destroyed. It's not a huge deterrent, but it can be enough to prevent an opponent from pushing for a few seconds. Spectres additionally can be used to manipulate enemy radar. Although not a huge threat directly, messing with the available information to the enemy team can lead them into bad positions, hesitation, or poor decision making. Players who are too reliant on their radar might find Threaded Spectres to be very frustrating to play against. Again, not all players fall into this category since greater game sense will mitigate the issue, but it can affect a large number of people nonetheless. Now we have the active area denial tools. Both Duskfield and Swarm Grenades fall into this category. On the spectrum of passive to active, Duskfields fall closer to the middle, while Swarm Grenades fall closer to active. Both grenades are deployables that create a small area upon landing. Duskfield grenades will create a large spherical area that lingers for a while, applying slow and eventually freezing enemies that walk inside. I like to put Duskfield grenades in the active category due to the relatively short linger time when compared to something like a snare bomb or trip mine. It just lasts a few seconds, but just enough to lock down a choke point temporarily or long enough to throw down in the middle of a fight to give yourself an advantage. Since Duskfields don't last forever, they are mostly a defensive tool that you could use reactionarily. Either you need to cut off a zone, or you need to help protect yourself. Swarm grenades are the offensive option. They deploy a number of small tracking grenades in a small area that remain for a short period. Just like Duskfields, you could use this grenade to prevent players from approaching through a choke, or you could use them offensively to damage players in a fight. What makes Swarm Grenades much more annoying to deal with is specifically the tracking mini grenades. While Duskfields require you to walk inside their area of effect, Swarm Grenades will cause problems if you get anywhere too close. Not only can you not approach through a choke, but you'll also be actively chased away by the tracking projectiles. They hurt, and they scorch, meaning you have to wait even longer before re-engaging in a fight because you need to wait for Scorch to wear off first, then you need to wait for your regen to start. Moreover, sometimes running away from the projectiles could also put you in a bad spot. If you're pinched between enemy players, you can't run towards the swarm grenade to get away, but you also might be chased in the opposite direction by that same swarm grenade, right into the sights of another player. Swarm grenades do a lot, and with a fairly short cooldown, you'll see a lot of them thwarting you in a large number of different ways. Speaking of cooldowns, maybe the next biggest compounding factor in the rise of Prismatic Hunters in the Crucible is the ability uptime. Last season, Bungie had made some changes to the Crucible, specifically targeting the insane uptime on abilities. The changes led the game back to its roots of being more gunplay focused. But even with those changes still remaining, the ability uptime has dramatically increased during the final shape. While the other subclasses remain pretty much the same, Prismatic is different. Prismatic is built around the idea of using as many abilities as you can, drawing from all of our other subclasses. Even the Prismatic fragments are all about either gaining transcendent energy or about ability regen in some way. In PvP, well, the same thing is true. While having high ability uptime in PvE makes the subclass feel fun and fluid, it quickly creates a difficult environment in PvP, which players and Bungie have wanted to move away from. Hunters have a lot of ways to reduce their cooldowns, whether that's directly from CDR or Prismatic, or from multiple charges of certain abilities. CDR, or cooldown reduction, comes from a number of Prismatic fragments, as well as orb generation or exotics like Frosties. But there are a lot of abilities that this doesn't really matter for, since many Hunter abilities have additional charges or quick energy refunds. Withering Blade has multiple charges, Threaded Spike can instantly return energy, and you could use 6 Coyote to gain an additional dodge, granting you multiple Threaded Specters. There are just too many ways to refund your abilities in an activity that is supposed to limit your ability regen. Combined with the utility of the abilities themselves, it's just a bit too much for one kit. Next up, we gotta talk a little bit about supers. Pretty much every super on Prismatic Hunter will be effective in the Crucible, although I personally don't feel like Silk Strike is that strong. Maybe I'm wrong. Ever talking about area denial again, Silence and Squall is at the top of the list. Although not currently the most popular option on Prismatic Hunter, it historically has been pretty good at causing enemies to scatter, moving them out of position, keeping them off objectives, or outright freezing them to death. It's probably the most powerful area denial tool in the game, which is why it's relegated to being a super. The most popular super currently, however, is Storm's Edge. In PvE, this super is pretty unimpressive, but in PvP, it's a totally different story. This super was made with PvP in mind. Not only is it a pretty short cooldown, but it's incredibly strong. Storm's Edge will one-shot any Guardian unlucky enough to be caught in its range, including those inside bubbles or wells. But that's not all, it's also a multicast ability, allowing you to teleport up to 3 times. It's hard to dodge, hard to counter, and one-shots you and your teammates easily. Storm's Edge is pretty much the only choice players make when selecting their super, and it makes a lot of sense. Its power, matched with its low cooldown and ease of use, make it probably one of the best abilities in the Prismatic Hunter kit for PvP. Exotic support is where things become even better for our Hunter friends. And to no one's surprise, a lot of it is due to exotic class items. I already mentioned how 6 Coyote can be used to make ability spam much worse. With class items, you get to not only have 6 Coyote, but mix it with a second powerful effect. A popular one is Spirit of Ophidian, but you could easily go with a different option like Dragon Shadow, Foe Tracer, or Renewal. Or what about Certarachnes and Ophidian for flinch resist, Worm Husk for healing? There are so many options that can give hunters an edge. But even without class items, you could use any regular exotic as well. Frosties, Balance of Power, Knucklehead, Mask of Bacchus. The list goes on. And many of these exotics, either class item or not, will be giving the already oppressive abilities a huge bump. Finally, we have flexibility, the last stop on our list. This might arguably have a bigger impact than the abilities themselves. For other subclasses, you are constrained by the particular archetype of the subclass it's built for. Void for sneaky gameplay and traps, Arc for up close and personal, Strand for acrobatics and agility. Each one is focused in one particular area, and that keeps each one relatively balanced. Prismatic, however, is by nature unbalanced. It draws from each subclass for its abilities, so it has access to every single one of these archetypes. You want to play aggressive and agile? Use Grapple. Want to play defense? Use Duskfields and Snare Bombs. The choices are endless. There is no limit to what you choose to focus on, or how much of a hybrid you want to build. Since all these playstyles can be wrapped into a single subclass, a Prismatic Hunter player can have a bit of everything, making them much harder to counter or deal with. It also makes it more challenging to know exactly what you'll be playing against. Sure, the typical hunter will take Swarms and Snare Bomb, but they don't have to. They can be flexible and choose whatever they feel they need to best play on a particular map or within a particular meta. That flexibility is what ultimately makes Prismatic Hunters so strong. They are not constrained by the limits of the other subclasses and can do whatever they need to perform at the top. With all that said, there's a lot that makes Prismatic Hunters tick in PvP. Their kit is full of numerous area denial tools and powerful utility, all on low cooldowns. They have the flexibility to choose tools they need to win, whether that's a change of abilities or a change of exotic armor to best suit the situation they find themselves in. It's a tough balancing act for Bungie. On one hand, you want Prismatic Hunter to feel strong and lean into the Prismatic power fantasy. But on the other hand, the high ability usage is something that we've tried to walk back from. It actively damaged the Crucible. The changes released with the August 6th patch are a good start, but Bungie needs to keep a close eye on all the abilities in the kit to really know where to make additional changes if necessary. For my fellow hunters out there, continue having fun at the top for as long as you can. For everyone else, don't worry too much, the pendulum always swings, and the next will be Warlock or Titan's time to shine. So what do you think? Have you had problems with Prismatic Hunter and the Crucible? Is it fine the way it is? Are the changes from Bungie going to move the needle? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, during my live streams, or over in my Discord server linked in the video description. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. There's more Destiny analysis videos on the way and you won't want to miss them when they drop. But I think that's all I've got for now. As always, I've been Rizeki, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.